Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Bible. Today, I would like to begin with just a little announcement. Something that, in fact, I was inspired today by, well, not today, but from the chapter that I'm going to be starting off reading to you from today. I was actually inspired by it to do this next thing that I'm about to announce. Well, you know what? Let me just read the verse, okay? Because this is going to actually be kind of fun, okay? And I think, if the Bible isn't really your thing, I totally get it. I was raised on it, so it's, I have a really fun time talking about it. But how Christians have tons of their own entertainment paraphernalia, movies and books and things like that. Well, I still have some of that entertainment. I've kept some of the books that I used to read as a kid. And so, tying that in, let me read one of these verses to you. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 2, and it says, "A people great and tall, the children of the Anakims, whom thou knowest, and of whom thou hast heard say, who can stand before the sons of Anak?" And the reason why this is significant is because one of the things that my dad actually did growing up, one of the few things that I actually appreciated about him, and wish I'd mentioned at his funeral, but failed to because I had my focuses on bigger things. But this is something that he did and that I would actually like to do for you guys, but in a, from my perspective, sort of degree. And that was that he would read after lunch every day, or if it was either every day or maybe it wasn't every day, but it was, it was like once or several times a week. He would read through a chapter in a book from a book series, and it was entertainment, it was fantasy, and it would be. And he went through two different series. He went through these, and he was actually, he was doing it not just for him, because he enjoyed reading as well. He wasn't a big reader. He mostly just read the Bible and books teaching him how to study, or, other people's ideas on how to study and understand the Bible. But these were actually just fantasies, stories made up by other Christians, and they were Christian-based stories. One series that was very popular back in the day was the Left Behind series. They turned it into a few movies that were based off the series, but my dad actually read through the entire book series to me and my mom, as when I was a kid. And those books were thick, and there were a lot of them. Like, I'm pretty sure there was like 13 or 14, I can't remember exactly. But the book that I am going to share with you guys is not from that series, but it is actually a kid's book. Not picturesque, but it was like for teenagers and things like that. But it was one of my favorite books, and it came from what was called the Cooper Kids series, a series by a Christian fella named Frank Peretti, and he wrote a number of other really fun and interesting books. This Present Darkness, and This Coming Darkness, or something like that. I can't remember what the other one was, but there was a pair of those. Those were really fun books. But the book I'm going to read to you is called The Tombs of Anak, and it's the Cooper Kids. They are, just for a little bit of introduction, so you know what we're getting into. Aside from we're talking about very tall people from Bible stories. Dr. Cooper himself, he's like a spin-off of Indiana Jones, except he's got two children. He's a single parent, a dad, and he's got a daughter and a son, and he goes on these archaeological adventures that are all based around Bible stories, or Bible concepts that they're trying to teach. And the stories themselves are actually pretty fun. And I actually tried to read through the book again. It was my favorite book, the one I read the most as a kid from that series, and is the only one from that series that I kept. But I couldn't bring myself to finish it because I'm not I'm not a reader like I used to be, but I am trying to get back into it a little bit. So coming across this verse, it reminded me of that book. And so when I am finished going through this book of Deuteronomy with you guys, I'm going to take a break from the Bible, and instead of reviewing the Bible, we're just going to go through that book, the Tombs of Anak. And I'm sure I can find a picture of it online or something. It's buried somewhere in my van, in my tote of books. But that is what I will be getting out and going through, and just reading it. Probably won't have a lot of commentary because it's just going to be mostly story. And yeah, so I hope you will join me for that. It should be pretty fun. I don't think it'll be something that I'll be like, really like critiquing or tearing apart. I am not like a professional writer, or so it's I enjoy good quality entertainment, regardless of what form it is. And if it's got good lessons, hey, it's got good lessons. You can't deny that, even if it's in the Bible, which is of course part of why I'm doing this series. But of course, I'm definitely gonna have some fun talking about the Christian aspects of it, which fortunately won't be too often, I don't think, throughout the book. It'll be mostly just a straight read through, and I've never done this before, because it's going to be more of a reading than a commentary. But there will be, I am going to want to comment on some things as we go along, but I'm going to try and keep it mostly to just reading the story to you, and actually I'm gonna try and keep it a live reaction. So I'm only going to read this book when I'm reading it in front of you guys on camera, so we can both get some live reactions. So yes, I hope you will come back and stick around, and hopefully we'll have some fun together. But for now, let's get back to the main topic of today, the Bible itself, and the very controversial things it has for us today. Now, right out the gate, we have a very humbling message from Yahweh to the people of Israel. And well, of course, this is Moses speaking, so really it's a message from Moses, if we're being realistic about it. And Moses is telling the people of Israel here, like, after discussing the children of Anak, he was basically letting them know, God's going to help you get through this, or he did help you get through this. And we're not dwelling on all the full details of the chapter here. The thing that I would like to focus on of this chapter is these few verses right here. Verses 4 through 6, he says, "Speak not in thine heart, after that the Lord thy God hath cast them out from before thee." Saying, this is talking about the other nations that God has helped Israel defeat. And God says, don't say, it says, "For my righteousness the Lord hath brought me in to possess this land, for the wickedness, but for the wickedness of these nations the Lord hath driven them out before thee." What God is saying is that don't say that you earned these lands. Don't ever think that. Don't ever get proud of yourself. The only reason you have these lands is because these nations, I think, are just terrible. And I want absolutely no mercy shown upon them, even though I created them and they're technically my responsibility. But I'm making you do the dirty work by killing them all. And he says, "Not for thy righteousness," nothing through what you've done. He says, "Not for thy righteousness or for the uprightness of thine heart dost thou go to possess their land, but for the wickedness of these nations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee, that he may perform the word which the Lord sware unto thy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." So he's clarifying that I'm not doing this for you. I'm not bringing you into the promised land for you. I'm doing it for the promise I made to Abraham and the promise and that I just hate these other nations. Which is interesting because, him hating these other nations was not originally part of that covenant. But, not part of what he said to Abraham. And he says, understand therefore that the Lord thy God giveth thee not this good land to possess it for thy righteousness, for thou art a stiff-necked people. And this is actually something God likes to say many times, or Moses likes to say many times. He likes to accuse the Israelites of being stiff-necked, of being stubborn. And he actually goes on for a few verses complaining about the different things that Israel put them through. Or them. Moses and Yahweh. God takes no responsibility for the things that happen. Constantly complaining about the rebelling, the asking for water and something other than bread, because humans need water and more than just bread to survive. But, Moses, Yahweh, wanted to form it as complaining, rebelling. And that's actually something that I had to deal with. That is a mark of a lazy parent. A lazy parent will say, oh, my child's just being complaining, they're saying they're not getting enough. When it's an abusive parent and that child is actually complaining for water, for proper nourishment, that's a legitimate excuse to be complaining, to need food, to need water. And it's kind of pathetic of the parent to talk crap about the child when the child is just trying to ask for basic needs. But, God wants to, or Moses wants to paint it in a light that only makes himself, which he still fails at doing, and Yahweh, which he also fails at doing, to look good, to look innocent. And it's also very interesting how often that God talks about how stubborn or rebellious the Israelites are, because, it's almost like he's saying, even though he never comes out and says it, it's almost like he's saying, I could have picked someone else. I could have picked someone less stubborn than you. And it makes me wonder, well, why didn't you? You're so all-knowing and all-powerful, you knew how stubborn the Israelites would be. Why did you pick them? Why did you make them and if you, which we're going to do, go further on into the Bible, we see just how stubborn and rebellious the Israelites are. They do not stick to the same religion, and they go through all kinds of crazy stuff, supposedly because they weren't faithful to God. Even though it's not really God doing anything, he just supposedly lets other nations come in and kick Israel's ass and enslave them. But we'll get to those stories, because those are some fun stories. But they are neither here nor there within this video. So, let's get right back to where we were. The next thing that comes along, Moses starts relaying the story of the golden calf and the 10 Commandments. You remember that story? Well, he's retelling it, and he's telling a different version of this story. Just a little bit different, but the difference is, I went back and read the original story, and none of these things were in there. And not only that, but Moses omits a little important bit here. When Moses comes back, let's just get into the review, Moses' review. He's talking about how God wrote with his finger on the tablets and all that jazz, and then he talks about how he came down, he saw the Israelites having a party because he'd been gone for 40 days. Remember that bit? That's important. That is only mentioned once in the original story. And Moses comes down, he sees the golden calf being worshipped by the Israelites, and Aaron had made it, and so yeah, Moses gets angry, he breaks the tablets, and for whatever reason, God isn't too upset that Moses broke those tablets. And I used to think, for some odd reason, that God made Moses create the second set of 10 Commandments, but that's actually not true. So I apologize in advance if anyone finds like an online comment in the future that I got this part right or wrong or whatever. So, you know, according to the Bible, he had Moses just create the tablets themselves, and then supposedly God wrote again with his finger again on these tablets. But Moses took a second 40-day break to do that. Hang on. Where'd it go? Ah, yes, here we are. He says, he'd already been on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, getting the 10 Commandments the first time, right? So after all this, supposedly, according to Deuteronomy, he goes back up again. Moses goes back up again for another 40 days and 40 nights to plead on behalf of Israel, and also on behalf of Aaron. It does say that Moses prays on behalf of the Israelites. It doesn't say that he prays on behalf of Aaron, or that he does it for 40 days and 40 nights in the original story. I mean, Aaron was still... I mean, you can assume that he prayed for Aaron at the same time, but it's just interesting that we're not told that Moses went back up the mountain for another 40 days and 40 nights. Like, that's like... And if he was up there all by himself, you know, the whole reason the Israelites made that golden calf and threw a party to it was because they kind of thought Moses was dead. He didn't have food or water. Supposedly God preserved him while he was up there. Like, he totally didn't take rations with him or anything. Or had them preset. Or didn't know that, or maybe he knew there was, like, food naturally growing up there or something. I don't know. But people thought he was dead. But he wasn't. He was fine. And so they threw that party, you know, creating their own new religion. And, you know, then the shit hit the fan. The point being is Moses supposedly went right back up there without hardly missing a beat. Did he have a meal or two? We don't know. But there's no way that Moses went up there for 80 days without food or water. Like, God just magically sustained him? Like, come on, be realistic. If you see that God sustained him magically, you're not being realistic. Okay. That's not humanly possible. That's just not. And I know there's other things that happen in the Bible that are not humanly or scientifically possible, and that is part of my fucking point. Some of these things are very comic bookish. The things that these people are able to do. It's like Hollywood superhero movie crap. So those second 40 days are not part of the original story. He may have added that because this is a new generation. He might be screwing with these people's memories. He might be, oh yeah, I also did this too. Your parents left that out from telling you that before they passed on. Just trust me. I know the real version of what happened because I'm the leader. I'm totally not super old and have a foggy memory going on or anything like our current president. You know, I never even thought of that. I never even considered that maybe some of the ramblings by Moses in here are potentially a bit senile. I never consider that. I wonder how much of the book is written by people who are legitimately out of their minds. And then the part we come to that Moses omits. Moses comes back down from the mountain with the new 10 Commandments that God wrote in with his finger, or dick, we don't know, we didn't see it. It would be funny if he used his dick. But he comes back down and says, Moses grinds the calf into dust. Small as dust, it says. It says, I took your sin, the calf which ye had made, verse 21, burnt it with fire, stamped it, ground it very small, even until it was a small dust, and I cast the dust thereof into the brook that descended out of the mount. There's a river descending out of the mountain. So Moses definitely had some water up there. Interesting. Kind of forgot about that bit. So maybe Moses actually had access to water while he was up there, and that's part of what helped him stay alive some of that time. But I bet he had food too. But, so, focusing back on the verse, Moses grinds this golden calf into dust, throws it in the river. What did he fail to mention in here? That was in the original story? He made the Israelites drink that water. He made them drink that contaminated water. And they got sick. I don't know how many people died. I don't know if that was part of the plague that God supposedly struck the Israelites with for this. Probably was. But there's no command in the original story by God. There's no God telling Moses to grind the calf into dust and force the Israelites to drink the contaminated water. As far as we know, that was all Moses' idea. We put people in prison for that shit today. We take water contamination as human beings very seriously. You're going to tell me that shit was okay and commanded by God? I mean, God never punishes, Yahweh never punishes Moses for that. So we can only assume that Yahweh is totally fine with forcing people to drink contaminated water. I mean, that's how they determine if a wife has been cheating or not. We covered that. One of the previous rules in the Bible. They take dirt off the floor of the tabernacle and they mix it with holy water and make the wife drink it. If she gets sick, she's guilty. If she's fine, she's not. It's the most fucking medieval, if she's a witch, she'll float on the water. Monty Python type of bullshit. It really is. It's ridiculous. Dirt off the floor mixed with water. Or in this case, a golden calf ground into dirt and mixed into water. And God commands and is cool with that shit. And this is the book that people read from and the God that people pray to every single Sunday all around the world. We come to this bit that I once came across. Well, it was kind of sort of brought to me, I guess you could say. I can't remember what I was watching, but it was I think it was a No, it was like a I don't want to call him a Pharisee. That's the Bible version, I guess you could say. A rabbi. It was a rabbi, and he quoted this verse that we are about to read here. And it's great by itself. And he was saying, he was specifically talking about how people criticize the Old Testament or the Bible, or like, I'm pretty sure he was referring to his religion, or maybe the text, whatever. But he quotes this verse, and he says that, and I wish I could remember the name. I wish I had the link. Sorry, I don't. But I remember it very clearly. Him reading this, and he was saying, this is what the entirety of the Old Testament is about, the Torah. This is the whole point of all the rules and everything. Of course, he didn't mention any of those crazy-ass rules that we have mentioned and gone through before. That would have gotten him thrown off the air. He was like on, I don't know if he was on, I think he was like on television talking about it. I'm pretty sure. This was like a video, recording of that on YouTube. But here's the verse. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12 and 13. And I'm going to read some other ones here. But these are the main two. And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee? But to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord, and his statutes, which I commanded thee this day for thy good. That's the gist. For thy good. For your good. For your benefit. That's what the Old Testament is for. That's what all these manipulative, crazy laws that are all about being focused on Yahweh and killing other people in other religions and wiping people out by the literal genocidal chunks. That's what the Old Testament's all about right there. It's for your good. You perform genocide for your good. You sell your daughter into slavery for your good. Shall I go on? I'd rather not, but I feel like it's kind of important. This is all in the Bible, dude. Dudes and ladies and in-betweens. This is some serious shit. You can't just ignore it and sweep it under the rug. Cherry picking is overrated. And it's dangerous. When you call something infallible and perfect, without even knowing the contents of it, when you respect something without even really knowing what it's about, what's in it, what it says, how it's built, how it's structured, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. You're gullible if you just give away your faith to that. I hate to say it, but I was too. I was raised to just believe this shit. I was raised to not question it. I was raised to think that, oh yeah, it was totally a normal and moral thing of the day back then for parents to just sell their kids into slavery. Or to commit genocide on another country because God commanded it, or take slaves because God commanded it and said it was okay. I was raised to believe. I was raised to accept that, and it's like it is. I gotta say, it is really, it never fails to repeatedly shock me how much screwed up stuff is in the Bible and how much it's repeated. And people just, they either don't know or they make excuses. They bend over backwards. Absolutely insane. And I think the rabbi quoted these verses as well. I don't know if he read the whole chunk. There is a pretty good chunk there that I think he may have skipped some. He may have skipped the verse about circumcising. It wasn't talking about circumcising pigs. It was metaphorical. He may have talked about it. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he mentioned this one. Love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure that was part of what the rabbi mentioned. I also believe I'm pretty sure he was like against. I think he was speaking out against some of the things in Israel that were happening against the Muslims. Like he was disapproving of the war and everything that was just going on, and he was using these verses as a reason, to promote peace, which was great, and I applaud that. I applaud this particular verse. Love the stranger. Remember that you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's great. That is great. Remember to help those who are struggling, because you used to struggle too. That is a great message. I applaud that. I cheer that on. I lift that up. That is one of the best things that the Israeli religion has to offer, if not the best. But the problem is that it goes 100% the opposite direction. I mean, God may as well have added in to this verse, love you therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. But love the strangers that I tell you to love, because you must leave room for genocide. And honestly, it's kind of unclear who the Israelites are supposed to be nice to, because false gods are out of the question. Affiliating with people that are into false gods are out of the question. So much so that God's intolerance is absolutely insane. I do not understand which strangers God is referring to here in verse 19 that the Israelites are supposed to love. Because God is constantly saying, all right, when you get to this nation, wipe everyone out, tear down their altars, destroy everything. If he's not telling them to take slaves, he's telling them to wipe them all out, including the women and the children. And it gets even crazier than that. We move to the end of chapter 12, and also chapter 13. We begin at verse 30 of chapter 12. Moses is saying, take heed to yourself, that thou be not snared by following them, after that they be destroyed from before thee, that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods, for even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods. What things soever I command you, observe to do it. Thou shalt not add thereto or diminish from it. Now, it is very curious here. Now, in case it's not clear, Moses is talking about, when you get into these nations, don't mix how they worship their gods with how you worship me. And he's talking about, he mentions a few of these, well, at least one of the terrible things that they did, and that was child sacrifice. But here's the thing. There is a rule that we mentioned in the last video that I'm going to bring up again. Can you guess what it is? If you guessed Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 18 to 21, you are correct. Yes, that is the rule that says if a child is being excessively rebellious / disobedient, just doesn't want to do what their parents tell them, those parents can legally have that child executed by having rocks hurled at them. Thus saith the Lord. A message from the Lord. It's absolutely terrible, but look it up. No, believe me, I'm not hurting there. I've freaking memorized it now. I can hardly wait to share that with street preachers when I meet them. Wonder what they're gonna have to say to that. Oh, I'm gonna have a lot more than just that verse though. Whew. I got a notepad of like a list of stuff. It's great. I should probably make copies in case they get angry and try and destroy it, But oh, it gets even better. So God is like, he's very intolerant, right? Well, what if you have someone that converts to another religion, an Israelite who converts to another, and they're like, and they come back and they're like, hey, guys, family, this religion is actually a lot more chill and nicer. What does God say to do with those people? Well, chapter 13, verse 6 says, if thy brother, thy son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, literally anyone that you know, which is of thine own soul, entice thee secretly. Because you sure as heck know you can't do this publicly. If they come to you in secret to entice thee, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, namely of the gods of the people which are round about you. That's interesting. So he was very, very particular about certain gods. Maybe he was okay with other ones? That is kind of curious, actually, because, in chapter 10, verse 17, it also says, for the Lord your God is God of gods. Now, I can't quite remember how Christians write that off, but historically, Yahweh was not the only God. Like, he was part of a pantheon. The name Elohim was not originally the name of a single deity. It was the name of a group of deities, a specific group of deities that Yahweh was part of, and he wasn't even the leader. He was also originally a Canaanite deity, a desert deity that some scholars believe the Israelites picked up along the way out of Egypt. And that is something that a lot of pastors, unfortunately, do not want to admit. That Yahweh was originally part of a team and not a Holy Trinity type of team. It wasn't just three. I'm not sure how many, but it was definitely not that original Trinity at all. And so, you know, what does God command to happen to these relatives or friends that come in and say, "Hey, come, let's serve a different God"? Let's imagine how they would actually say it, okay? Like, "Hey, man, don't you think Yahweh is kind of strict? Don't you think he's kind of a bit of a dick?" Well, you know, it was actually, you know, and I wasn't trying to be disloyal or nothing, but I actually came across some information, you know, about these deities in this, you know, this other nation, and you know, they're actually pretty chill. Like, yeah, I know a lot of the ones around us did have child sacrifice, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really cool with that. But yeah, I'm not really cool with some of the laws that Yahweh has either. I don't think they're all perfectly fair. But you know, this particular one that I found, it's actually very chill. Like, there's no human sacrifice. You know, the gods are, well, for the most part, pretty cool. Yeah, there's multiple ones, but they're actually all pretty chill. You know, they used to be humans once. You know, and you know, they're very relatable. You know, and you know, it's just like, you want to check it out. Like, you know, I promise I'm not going to tell. Okay, you know, it's like, this conversation never happened. You know, because you know how Yahweh is and his crazy rules. Why would the conversation have to be something like that? Because talking about other religions and suggesting looking into them or anything like that is punishable by thou shalt surely kill him. Oh, sorry, YouTube. Unalive. Oh, wait, you only get demonetized, right? I'm not trying to make money off of this shit. I'm just trying to put the word out there and wake people to fuck up. Yeah, verse 9 of chapter 13. It says, "Thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people." Like, you're supposed to arrest him on the spot, basically, from what I gather. And everyone's supposed to pitch in, I guess. It doesn't. Oh, yep, verse 10. "And thou shalt stone him with stones." They love throwing rocks. "That he die, because he hath sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage." "And all his Israel shall hear and fear." Hear and fear. It sounds like a tyrannical political campaign slogan. Hear and fear. Vote for Yahweh. Damn. I mean, he's literally telling people to execute each other over being suggested to go to other religions. like being advertised to, like by their own friends and families and neighbors. God is saying to kill these people, to unalive them. Like, what the fuck, man? That's the epitome of religious intolerance right there, my friend. There's no other way to say it. There's no other way to slice it. Yahweh is incredibly intolerant. And the fact that he said, and that he's also saying, namely, of the religions around here, around the places that you conquered, it kind of gives the vibes that it's like, but there's other gods that I know that other people can serve that I'm cool with, and you can love those strangers. God just never actually says that in these verses. Almost makes you wonder if, these books have been through a lot of edits. Could it be possible that some of those things were left out over time by different scribes because they felt like, oh, well, the religion changed. So, it literally did. The modern day believers of the religion that still uses the Torah, they don't follow this stuff to the letter. They're not doing this stuff. They're not killing animals even or anything like that. I've heard some news about a red heifer getting killed or something like that. It's very significant or something, but they're not like going full blown into it or anything. They might still do the circumcising. In fact, I guarantee they do. But they don't go all out with the slavery and things like that. But, it makes, if Yahweh was originally part of a group of gods, it would kind of make sense that maybe there was, his buddies originally, his buddy gods that he was cool with, that other people could serve, and maybe there was like an other pantheon of deities that they were enemies with, kind of like how the Norse pagan deities have the Jotun, or the giants that they're enemies with. I don't know if people served those. Maybe they did. People serve all kinds of shit, but maybe that was the idea here behind saying, namely of the gods of the people which are round about you. Oh, and then we have another thing, which... Oh no, let's move on a step further. Let's say an entire city converts within Israel. Maybe they vote for it. Maybe they wanted it. But it says, if you find out that the children of Belial, which is a specific deity, I don't know why it's a specific deity, or it's, I don't know, but anyways, it's some other god. He says, certain men, the children of Belial, are gone out from among you and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go and serve other gods which ye have not known. Then shalt thou inquire and make search and ask diligently. And behold, if it be true and the thing certain, that such an abomination wrought among you. So basically he's saying, if a city is infected by people that are wanting to change religions of the city, well, maybe a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses show up. Well, okay, Mormons. Let's go with Mormons. Since no one ever saw these tablets, they went straight into the Ark of the Covenant, just like no one ever saw these golden plates that Joseph Smith ever made. So let's say a bunch of Mormons show up to try and convert a city, and they start doing a good job, and they actually start converting a city in Israel. Of course, Mormonism did not exist back then. This is just an example. We'll say Belial was like Mormonism. Just for shits and giggles. But as a result of that, if a city converts, okay, fine, we'll say Norse. People convert to Norse. Let's say they convert. Let's say they do so willingly. They vote for it and everything. They're like, yeah, we're done with Yahweh. No offense to our friends and neighbors around us, we're not going to go to war or anything like that, but we're just not going to serve Yahweh anymore. We like Norse paganism instead. That was also not around back then. Just an example. But God, what does God say? Does God say, leave them alone, let them enjoy their religious freedom? No, he doesn't. He says, thou shalt surely smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof with the edge of the sword. Literally, once again, genocide. Not even the animals. And if the animals don't survive, the women and children definitely aren't going to survive either. They're not mentioned here, but they're goners if the animals are too. It's fucked up, man. But here's the real crazy thing I want to end on. One step further. And it's actually at the beginning of chapter 13. Yeah, all that was in chapter 13, just in case I forgot to mention that earlier. But at the very beginning of the chapter, God says, if there arise among you a prophet, or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Verse 5, and that prophet, or that dreamer of dreams, even though he was right, even though he got his prophet and signs right, shall be put to death, because he hath spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God. So even if someone shows up who is capable of performing signs and miracles, maybe someone like Jesus, someone who could, I don't think he could perform signs and miracles per se, but I think he had, definitely some spiritual knowledge, some knowledge of psychology, as well as some knowledge of advanced healing, to a degree. But he was someone who you could say tried to turn people away from Yahweh. That's certainly how the Pharisees kind of sort of took it. Of course, the Christians disagree with that. But most modern, Jews also agree that Jesus was not the Messiah. So much so to the point that they don't want to hear about it, and have tried to make it illegal to talk about in some states in the U.S., which is fucking insane. And weak. Very weak of them. Oh, man. Some people just can't take a joke or serious criticism because they don't want to lose power. They don't want to be accountable. Well, that's changing. Gotta have accountability if we want the age of peace to come about, don't we? But yeah, even if someone comes around and tells you the truth, tries to turn you away from Yahweh, even if it's your friend or relative. You know, even if they're capable of divine healing, even if they know Reiki magic, it doesn't matter. If they try to tell you that Yahweh is not a great guy, kill him. Unalive him with rocks. That is what Yahweh says. That is what the Bible says. That is what the Torah says. And people wonder why war is still going on over there. You can cherry pick all day. But when, I'm not sure if I got this out properly in my last video, so I'm going to try and say this again. But when you don't take care of your foundation, when you don't pay attention to what you are building your life and beliefs on, if you don't pay attention to the quality or truthfulness or sensibility behind what you are believing in, if there is no logic, or if there is missing logic, if there are holes in it, if there are termites in it, if there are morally objectable things within it, even if there are good things scattered about here and there, you are still dealing with a foundation that is corrupted. And you need to stop depending on it. You need to refine yourself. You need to refine your beliefs. You need to constantly be rechecking what you believe. You need to be very careful of what you choose to accept into your life. You need to be careful of what you say is holy. Because most people do not understand what that word means. It's not that it's an extra reverent word. It's not. It's really not. And, yes, I believe God is love, amongst many other things, but God is not Yahweh. God is not this deity that is so intolerant that he commands people to kill each other if they even suggest going to another religion. It doesn't matter, it's imagine a house. Imagine living in a house. And, you like it. It looks great on the outside and on the inside. But, it's got mold. It's got termites. And maybe you know where the termites and the mold is. And you know to stay away from them. And you live in those other parts of the house. Does that really make sense? Does that really make sense to just go take a house that already is and not do anything with it, or pay attention to the other parts in it, and just like, oh, I'm not gonna stay in the basement because it's leaky down there. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm gonna stay away from it. Oh, I'm not gonna be around the chimney because bats get into it. Oh, no, I'm going to stay away from the living room because, the bats get in there. I'm just going to lock it up and, just ignore it. Oh, I'm not going to use the second bathroom because there's mold in there and I don't want to get sick from breathing it. Just build your own damn house. Don't be lazy. And trying to make excuses for these sorts of things in the Bible that are commanded. It's like painting over the mold. It's like trying to say, well, the termites need a home. It's natural for them. It's natural for their time. Just leave them alone. That's what people do when they make excuses for these bits in the Bible. It makes no damn sense. They're not thinking about it. They're not sitting down and asking themselves, would I actually do this? Would I actually approve of this? God's ways are higher than our ways? Okay, maybe, but, I'm pretty sure, if the average human is not okay with slavery, then neither should the big man upstairs. Like, if the saying is true that God believes in us, then maybe we should have some faith in ourselves and what we understand to be right. Sometimes we can tell from the majority of what is right and wrong. We can tell from the stories that people share, their experiences that they pass on. We can tell from scientists and psychologists what is healthy for us, what is not. Healthy behavior, healthy action, healthy words, or ways of speaking to each other, being honest. It all makes a very serious difference. Critiquing all of it, especially our spiritual beliefs. If we want the world to get better, we've got to make ourselves better. We've got to make our beliefs better. And that means critiquing them. It means lowering our ego, being willing to say, I may have been wrong about this for a very long time. Hey, it happened to me. It's happened to people who left Islam. It's happened to plenty of, people across the world that's left every other religion. And it applies no less to Christianity. Be mindful of your beliefs, my friends. You don't want holes or termites or mold in the home of your beliefs. So don't just adopt someone else's house. Build your own. Until next time, my friends, stay safe and farewell.